All right, English 111 students, we are in this next to last week of our course, week 15. I can't believe it. We are almost at the end of this thing, but we have Essay 4 that we need to get done. So let's just jump right in. And first of all, talk about what do you need to do this week? Well, first of all, you need to read chapter 15 in the textbook, which is what we're going to talk about today, the Presenting the Argument lecture. So chapter 15 in the textbook. You also need to take quiz number 8. Don't forget to take your quizzes. Quiz number 8, same as before, 10 questions, open book. Nothing's changed there. And then if you so choose, turn in your rough draft this week of essay number 4. Now, rough drafts will be due on December 13th. That's Sunday, December 13th. But remember, your final drafts are due that following Wednesday, so there's a big, quick turnaround on the final draft. So 13th is Sunday, right? So let me see, 13th and 14th. 15th. Actually, yeah, that Wednesday, the 16th of December. I had to think about that for a second. So turn that, if you want to turn that rough draft in, I will turn it back around to you quickly, probably that Monday, so you can make any final corrections that you need to make. Okay, so this week, chapter 15 of the textbook, quiz number 8, and turn in your rough draft if you decide to turn in a rough draft for me to review. Okay. Chapter 15 in the textbook is about presenting the argument. This is actually about speaking. Now, we don't do speaking in this class. We could. That is one of the things I could do as the teacher, but I've decided not to do that over the years and concentrate on the writing. But I do like to do one lecture on presenting the arguments. That's what we're going to talk about today. First thing I want you to do is I want you to pause this video, and you're actually going to find 4 links in the week 15 folder. The first 3, one's going to be JFK's speech, Jim Gaffigan, and Admiral McRaven are the first 3. I want you to click on each of those videos. Each one's a couple minutes, 3 minutes long. Watch those videos. And what I want you to do as you're watching those videos is look and say, okay, why were these speeches successful? Why were these speaking events successful for these speakers? This is JFK's famous to the moon speech. Jim Gaffigan's one of his famous comedy routines, a speech by Admiral McRaven called, or a portion of which is I've entitled "Make Your Bed" speech. These were all very popular speeches and speaking events. They've gotten a lot of airplay on YouTube. Why? What makes them popular? Go ahead and watch all 3 clips, make some notes. Pause this recording, go watch all 3 of those clips, make some notes, and then come back when you're done, okay? Go ahead and do that. Okay, did you watch? I hope you did. And so what made these speeches successful? What made them effective? Okay, I'm just going to give you some things. First of all 3 of the speakers were very, very confident, weren't they? They knew their material. They were confident. They were looking the audience in the eyes, the camera in the eyes, whatever the case may be. They were confident. They made a connection with their audience, especially Jim Gaffigan and his humor, right? He definitely made a connection with the audience, as did the other 2, because, again, one of the reasons is because of their confidence. They were obviously all very prepared. They weren't speaking off the cuff. All 3 had come to the speaking event ready to go. Jim Gaffigan in particular and Admiral McRaven use humor, and humor can be very effective. We'll talk about that later. They all used simple language and sentence structures. There were no $5 words, as it were. There were not a lot of multisyllabic words, and I just used one right there, didn't I? They were simple words, direct words, words that connected with the audience. Their points were very clear. You knew where they were in their speeches. You knew the points they were making at each point, and it was very clear what they were saying. And their context and their content was very significant, right? And the To the Moon speech in particular. This was John F. Kennedy commissioning America to go to the moon before the end of the 1960s. So good stuff, right? That's what made these presentations effective. You want to be just as effective in your presentation. So we're going to learn today, how do we do that? What are some principles? And the first thing that I talk about under the header of the principles of good presentations are the no's. Now, this is my thing. The knows. What are the things we need to know? First of all, we need to know our purpose. What's the purpose of our speaking event? Why are we doing it? Secondly, what's our subject? We need to know our subject well. We need to have uh, some level of expertise in our subject. If we go up and try to speak on something we don't know anything about, we're going to fall on our faces. We need to know the situation, not just, and what I talk about there is not the audience in this point, but where am I going to be speaking? What's the venue? Do I have electronic PowerPoint device? Do I have microphones? Am I going to be on a stage? Am I going to have a podium? What's the situation I'm working in? And then also, um, what's the situation in the world? What's the situation in my area that I'm dealing with? Right now we're in COVID. We're also in tense race relations in our country. I need to know those things when I go for my speech because they could affect what I say or don't say, right? Again, know my audience. Who am I speaking to? We all know that. Know the structure of my speaking. What am I going to say? How am I going to say it? In what order am I going to say things? Having an outline, knowing what I'm going to say, and know my visuals. In other words, if I have a PowerPoint presentation, know those visuals. Don't read the visuals. Know them well enough where you can glance at them. You know where you are in your presentation, and you can speak more off the cuff. Okay. You don't want to sit and read your presentation to people. Okay. All right. And no practice. That's the last one. You've got to practice, folks. A lot of people try to go into speaking events with zero practice, and they usually fall on their faces. Unless you're a seasoned speaker, or unless you've spoken on a topic so much that you know it so well, you need to practice. And even seasoned speakers practice. They don't often go up cold turkey. Okay, so know your purpose, your subject, your situation, your audience, your structure, your visuals, and practice. Some things to consider, and you'll see a lot of overlap in these next few slides, but some things to consider when you're doing a presentation is that introductions and conclusions matter a lot. All right. Introduction, you're telling you're drawing in your audience. You're saying, okay, you need to listen to me, and here's why. And so that makes it very, very important. If you lose people in your introduction, if you don't draw them in, if you don't entice them to listen, they're gone. They may still be in the room sitting in the chair, but they're not going to be listening. And conclusions matter because that's where you summarize everything that you just said, and it's the last thing you say. So a basic principle of speaking is that the last thing you say is often the most memorable thing you say, and should be the most memorable thing you say, because that's what people leave having just heard. So that's why a conclusion is important. There you summarize your main points, just like we do in a conclusion in our papers. We summarize our thesis, we summarize our main points and our next steps so that people are thinking about that when they leave, and hopefully they remember it. Don't forget to consider the venue where you're going to give your presentation and under what conditions. Again, am I going to have a podium? Am I going to have a sound system? Am I going to have somebody there to help me? All these questions. Is it going to be cold? Am I going to have air conditioning? Am I going to have heating? Just all the basics. What's the venue going to look like? The idea of presenting from notes or not, the pros and cons. Good thing about presenting from notes is that you don't get lost in your presentation. Everything's in front of you. Keep everything in front of you. You've got your plan of action right there with you, and so you don't miss major points. You can keep yourself organized. Of course, the con of using notes is some people get too tied to their notes, and they start reading from them. So that's one of the major cons. It's kind of like the notes become a crutch for them. The pros of presenting with notes, not presenting. So the pros of not presenting with notes, I'll get it in a minute, is that even if you just practiced a lot, you seem spontaneous and off the cuff, and you're not behind a podium or behind a set of notes, and so you seem more open with your audience. Of course, the con of not presenting with notes is that you can forget something or get lost in your presentation. And I've seen people do that. I don't have strong feelings either way, whether you use notes or not in a speech. But I do say this: whatever you do, don't be burdened by your notes if you use them. Okay, just glance at them, get your ideas, but still, you must practice so that even if you're using notes, it seems more spontaneous and off the cuff and open to your audience. Okay. Be clear with your main points. Don't allow your listeners to become lost in your presentation. I think that goes without saying. And of course, use proper syntax and grammar. Also, humor can be your friend, but don't use it as a crutch. What I mean by that is don't use humor too much. Don't overuse it, and don't try because too much humor you lose content in your speech. It starts to be a comedy routine instead of an informational, motivational, persuasive event. Also, if you're not good at humor, you need to be careful in using it. Humor can actually hurt you if you're not good at using it. So, humor's good. If you know how to use it, be careful. Be relational with your audience. Making a connection is important. You do that through your personality. Just be you. That's what I tell students all the time. Just be you. Don't try to be somebody else. Don't try to be funny if you're not funny. Don't try to tell stories that aren't true. Just be who you are. People will love you for who you are. All right. Repetition is key in oral presentation. Whereas I tell you in your writing, don't repeat things too much. We don't say that a whole lot in speaking. The more you repeat things, unless you just get annoyingly repetitive, the more you repeat things, the more you have a chance of people remembering them. And if you're good at repetition and you do it in a strategic and intentional way, it can be very powerful. Parallelism is an effective tool. We've talked about parallelism before, saying things slightly different way, but saying the same thing but in slightly different ways. It can be very effective, sort of like repetition. In your speech, you want to build to a climax if you can, and that's what JFK did in his speech to the moon. We go to the moon in this decade and do the other things not because they are easy, but because they are hard. That's the central line in his speech, and it's the climax. He's saying we're going to do all this because it's hard, and at the end of the day we're going to be better for it. You want to try to have something like that in your speech. Build to your main point, build to your climax. And visuals can help, but they're not always necessary. In fact, I tell people to be able to give your speech without visuals. Always be able to give any speech without visuals. Because what if you get to the venue and the electricity is out or the PowerPoint projector's down or whatever, but you're still asked to give your speech? You need to be able to do it without the visuals. Don't use visuals as a crutch, okay? More considerations. When you're presenting, don't read your slides. Don't turn your back on your audience. Oftentimes we do that when we're reading our slides, right? Don't use or too much. We all use these little things in our little ticks, I call them, in our speech. Interjections, if you will. But try to limit them as much as possible. Try to limit fidgeting, moving your hands around, doing things with your hands, tapping your feet, walking around too much, whatever. Don't fidget, and certainly don't read your presentation entirely. Don't use your notes as a crutch. I've said it before, practice, right? I mean, this is key in any presentation. And dressing appropriately, getting enough rest the night before or the day of, maintaining good eye contact, standing. Rarely do you want to do a presentation sitting down. And allow your audience to participate if you can. Ask questions, get audience participation, get people to raise their hands, stand up, move around, whatever. The more you get the audience engaged through kinetics, the more they're going to engage their minds. So you don't want to do too much of it, and some people are very uncomfortable with too much audience participation, but a good, healthy amount will improve your overall presentation and your overall receptiveness to the audience, okay? Web presentations. I've been assuming we're talking about face-to-face presentation. Web presentations offer a much kind of a different venue, as it were. So a few different things that we need to think about. You want to think about all the things I've said so far, but also you want to think about practicing not just your speech, but with your technology. Because if you don't practice with technology, Murphy is always there to get you, right? And even if you practice, he's there to get you sometimes. But the more you practice with the technology, the better you're going to be the day of at using it. Make sure you look at the camera, because looking at the camera on a web presentation is like looking your audience in the eyes. If you're looking down all the time, you're going to disconnect with your audience. Again, you want to dress appropriately. You want to enunciate your words, because over the video, words can become mumbled, so make sure you enunciate them well. Consider your background. What's going on behind you? I've seen so many people not do this, and it's very distracting when there's a cat in the background swatting at a piece of yarn or running around or whatever's going on. So make sure you consider your background. And don't slouch. Sit up straight, look into the camera, etc. Now, what I want you to do is I want you to pause this presentation now, and I want you to go to this link, which again is in the week 15 folder. Go to this presentation, click on it, and I want you to watch this presentation. I want you to answer the question, why is this presentation by this student bad? When you've done that, come back and we'll talk about it. Okay, I hope you did it. Why was this presentation so bad? Well, first of all, the student had a silly topic, didn't he? It was just silly. Why you don't drop your books on the floor. What? I mean, come on, really. And obviously, the topic had no significance to his audience. His main points were not clear. I don't even know if he made any real main points. He leaned on the podium. He crossed his legs. He was nervously laughing the entire time. He didn't obviously know his topic well, probably because he came into class that day and the teacher said, hey, you've got a speech to give today, and he'd forgotten to do it, and so he just came up with something on the fly. He'd obviously not prepared at all, and he had no evidence to support his points. He just kept making his main points, which I don't even know what they were, but he kept saying the same things over and over again with no evidence. Horrible presentation, kind of funny watching it, but very uncomfortable to watch it too. You don't want to give presentations like that. And if you follow some of the things I've talked about in this lecture today, you won't give presentations like that. All right. It's going to be a short lecture today, but let's talk about Essay 4. We know that Essay 4 is an argument of proposal, right? We still have to do 4 to 5 pages of writing, 4 sources, right? So we're doing four academic sources, 4 to 5 pages of writing. Don't forget that your thesis statement, actually you don't have to worry about this part. Let's go to the next thing. Things to think about. Be sure you're using, and I've seen this a lot with students in my composition classes. Make sure you're using in-text citations. I saw a number of people this last essay number 3, that were not using in-text citations. Make sure you're using in-text citations and works cited, and that you're using MLA format. Make sure you're writing in the third person. Avoid the first and second persons. All right. Be sure your main points, your topic sentences directly support your thesis statement. Make sure your thesis statement is the last sentence in your introduction, and make sure your topic sentences are the first sentence in each of your main body paragraphs. So get these basics down, okay, folks? I want to see this last essay be your best essay. I really do. Be sure to proofread and edit your drafts as you're writing. Make sure you're proofreading yourself. Use the Writing Center if you want to, and I would encourage you to do that if you need additional assistance. And guess what? I'm available. Ask me any questions you want. You can get me by phone, text, email, whatever way suits you. I am here to help, okay? All right, so short lecture, but roughly the same amount of time if you go and you've done the right thing and watch the 4 videos for this lecture. But giving good presentations, giving good speeches is important. Being able to articulate what you're saying in an oral fashion is a skill that can be learned. I know some of you are probably very scared to do it. We don't have to do it in this class. You will have to do it in life sometime, and certainly in your public speaking class in college. So, learn a little bit about it. See if you can't get better. It's not the most horrible thing in the world, I promise you. I didn't like it years ago when I first started, when I was a teenager. But I love it now. I love to get in front of people and speak and teach in particular. So you get used to it. It is a skill you can learn. All right, so this week, again, reading chapter 15, quiz number 8. Turn in the rough draft for Essay 4 if you so choose. And we're driving towards a final draft of Essay 4 on Wednesday, December the 16th. I hope you all have a wonderful week. I hope things are going well for you. Contact me if you need me. Have a great day.